Big hand. Come on, have a seat. And we're gonna wait for the Connor and the live stream team. Are we live? Oh, man, look at that. Come on, Rusty. Let's take a look at, oh, there's me. Is that a good picture? I look younger there for some reason.
Yeah, I don't look younger there.
Yeah, okay, so, there we go. There's been a lot of changes going on in automotive retail. And I don't know if anybody saw the counters on the Market Scan booth. Did anybody take notice on those numbers? Was anybody kind of blown away with how quickly and how many complex calculations being done every second for automotive retailers across the country? And I recently sat down with Rusty and we talked over dinner, and I said, you know, I really think that the dealer community doesn't understand everything that you're doing. I really wanted to break for the first time some, what I believe is breakthroughs for the OEM community, and I thought the best way to do that is just to have a conversation. So let's jump in. So Market Scan has been around for a long time. And, you know, I think as we look at the journey, how many people honestly say, I'm not really sure what Market Scan does? Raise your hand. Few? Yeah. Oh, there we go. So, how many people are using Market Scan data or products right now? Let me ask that. Market Scan data or products? Okay, so we have a big market opportunity. So, tell our dealers here, our OEM representatives, all the people on the live stream, how has this company evolved and what are you laser focused on right now?
Great question. Thanks for talking me into doing this as opposed to, I get to throw my speech away after a bottle of wine. I appreciate that. Our process is literally designed to provide a scientifically perfect solution for any automotive transaction. And our journey's been a long one. I started this company by writing a software package for my dad's dealership in 1988. It's the only job I've ever had. And our trajectory has really evolved. You know, we sold desking software directly to dealerships for many, many years. A product called Lease Profit. One time we were responsible for a little more than 80% of all leases that were written in the country. And through that process, we discovered we're not a software company, we're a solutions company. And as the needs of the market have evolved, we've shifted. And our biggest focus now is powering other technologies. Nobody raised their hand. Nobody's using a Market Scan product in here, and that doesn't surprise me. But you're probably using a Market Scan product and you don't know it. We calculate on average about 300 million scientifically perfect solutions for automotive transactions every single day.
So repeat it. So every day your platform's calculating 300 million payments for dealers around. Is that just the US or worldwide? Where is that?
It's continental US, Alaska, and Hawaii. So we're not outside of the US.
Okay, 300 million.
300 million. We only get $10 a payment, so business is okay. So, I wish that was a business model. Obviously, it's not. But yeah, so we're kind of the Intel inside for a lot of different technologies. It took us a long time to kind of figure out how do we narrow down what we actually do. And we talked about that. We provide scientifically perfect solutions for any conceivable automotive transaction. But the applications for that are limited only by your imagination. So we power a lot of analytics tools for lenders and manufacturers. a lot of desking tools and website providers. We calculate their payments for them. And then we also have our own suite of products for dealers.
So in this space, we have recently seen a lot of money, we'll talk about that today, go in. But over the last 30 years, how did you stay relevant? I mean, for those of you who are in the software development business, I see Max. I mean, 30 years is a long time to be relevant and survive in automotive. What was the DNA? What was the guiding North Star that really helped you be able to sit here and say the company that we imagined really from dust is calculating 300 million payments a day?
It's not one thing, right? It's a couple. One of them is just when I was 12, my dad challenged me to memorize a Theodore Roosevelt quote. Right?
And what was that quote?
Man in the arena.
Okay.
Right. So that, are you familiar with the quote?
No. I mean, if you just claimed you memorized it, I mean, yeah, my dad told me about this quote. Okay, what's the quote?
I was 12. Okay, so that was like 20 years ago.
Already disclaimers. Already disclaiming.
So now, let's give me a second. So I know the first part of it because anyway, I'll give it a shot. All right. So it's not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself on a worthy cause, who at the best, in the end, knows the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place will never be with those cold, timid souls who knew neither victory nor defeat. So that...
Oh, hold on. I think that's... I see some people crying in here, Rusty, because they do have the blood and dust. Does anybody feel like your journey in automotive has a lot of blood and dust on it? Right?
Yeah, so we distilled that down to what we call shoelaces, which I know is going to sound kind of funny, but if you're in any space long enough, especially the technology space, you get kicked in the teeth a lot. And we've gotten kicked in the teeth enough times to where we've acquired a taste for shoelaces. And it sounds horrible, but we kind of look forward to them now because we buy into this philosophy that necessity is the mother of all invention, right? And then we also buy into this philosophy that crisis creates necessity. So it's not a big stretch to say that crisis creates opportunity. And over the last 30 years, we've seen more crises as we can count. Gulf War, September 11th, crash 06, 07, 08. Most recently, the pandemic. Every single one of those has created an opportunity for all of us. And we just try to solve problems, to create solutions for the problems that are created because of those opportunities.
So, Rusty, when we were talking about this conversation and really to help elevate retailers' minds, you talked about science, technology, and data. That's what Market Scan is really laser focused on. So how do you see it that way? Why do you believe that this interdependence is where our industry has to be focused and why you're focused on these areas?
It's a great question. So we have all these little catchphrases around the office, right? And I didn't come up with most of them, but I like them. One of them is big data without science is just noise. And there is a monstrous amount of data out there in the automotive space. I mean, we know consumers' digital behavior. We've got all these different matrices that we can track. At the end of the day, it all comes down to what's going to influence the consumer's behavior. And we have to take everything into consideration in order to do that. We can't have a disconnect between what gets quoted online from when the customer comes into your store, because then you have a battle. So we have to combine that science, technology, and data in order to do that. Obviously, the technology part of it is the, calculating 300 million payments. 10 years ago, that probably wouldn't have been possible, but cloud computing has brought a whole new opportunity for all of us. And then the science part of it is just making it all work, and then obviously just massive amounts of data that we have to aggregate, so we have to tie it all together.
So when you think of a practical application, I mean, we also know that, the lenders are really involved, and we're gonna see some amazing examples in a few moments that are gonna blow your mind. There seems to be silos, the manufacturer silo, the lender silo, and what the dealer is trying to accomplish. I don't know if anybody feels that tension sometimes. So from a lender's perspective, what are they trying to achieve? How does the market scan tech, which obviously you work with all the major lenders, what's important to them?
Paying the right price for the business. If we look at retailing, it doesn't matter what the widget is. We all essentially have to buy the business. The secret is to pay the right price for it. If I was a lending institution and I came out of nowhere and I had a great lease package where everybody could go get a brand new Ferrari for $1,500 up front and $300 a month, nobody'd be driving a Prius, right? But I'd go broke as a lending institution. Flip side is if my payments are Ferrari type payments on a Prius, I'm not going to get any of that business either. So being able to combine the science, technology, and data and analyze where a lending institution is positioned in the marketplace down to the trim level and the demographic and the zip code, and be able to understand what it costs in order to acquire the business that they want in their portfolio, and that's paramount, and that's what they're looking for.
So a question for the dealers here in the room. How many times do you feel you lost a deal because the OEM's financing or leasing programs on a competitive model, you lost the business because you weren't even close in the payment that was presented to the consumer? How many times you felt like you could have had that customer, but it was just the wrong, one person raised their hand? I think we should just stop it right now. Too many times. And I think one of the things that blew me away when I finally went out to LA and saw what MarketScan is doing, I don't spend a lot of time in the F&I office, but I haven't heard too many dealers say, I know the best payment from all lenders in a second for this customer. All lenders, and who has the best deal. Like, I don't hear that in conversations. What I do hear is X OEM's lease program sucks this month. It's like, we're not able to move these vehicles. And I was like, oh, gee, that's really sucks for you. And I would just be like, that's the way it is. But I want to really challenge our thinking is, what if it didn't have to be so difficult? So, Rusty, there are dealers in this room, whether they wanted to raise their hands because it's early in the morning or not, that they're saying, hey, guys, your programs this month are not competitive. So what are the challenges? Why would an OEM who obviously wants to write the business, whether through captive or just move their inventory, what's their biggest challenge? Why do some cooperative people here in the room who raise their hands feel that the OEM's a little disconnected?
Because they are, to a certain extent. There's so much competition out there, and there's so many different ways to look at the world. And one of the things that we see with the OEMs, and we try to get them to shift how they look. In the lending institutions was a big one too, which took us a long time to get them to shift the way they see things. But another one of these goofy sayings we have around the office is, it's not how we see the outside world that matters, it's how the outside world sees us. And from an OEM perspective, they're in these a lot of times these big glass buildings, never spend any time on the showroom floor. they might be missing the mark, right? So when there's a disconnect between how their marketing is and how you guys actually sell cars, then it's like building two bridges across the river and neither one of you are talking to each other, right? The cars are just gonna launch off and end up wet. And we have to get it right. And there's ways to get it right. It just requires a little bit of a shift in thinking.
Great. So when we think about the shift in thinking, right? How do we get there? How do we get the OEMs, the lenders, and the dealers to be thinking in a more aligned way? I mean, I think that unless everyone here in the room doesn't, think it's a problem, there are some lessons that you've been learning on how to bring people to the table. What are some of those lessons? I mean, in the last 14 months, there's been a tremendous interest in doing more things online, creating a touchless payment, frictionless environment. There's so many catchphrases. How are you getting people together, especially in this accelerated digital retailing ecosystem that we're in now?
It's another interesting one. So there was a big shift towards digital retailing before COVID, right? But it was slow, and it's been necessary for a very, very long time. COVID hit, and then all of a sudden, everybody's like, oh, what do we do, right? We have cars. We want to sell cars. Our customers aren't allowed to come in. They want an Amazon-type buying experience, right? And as a franchise dealer community, you don't have that. Some do, but not really. If you look at a Carvana model, right, they have it, right? They have perfected the model. Their perfection of the model is because they control the narrative from A to Z, right? They dictate the terms and conditions under which they're willing to transact. They handle the entire marketing process. You go to their website, the whole thing runs through, right? You guys don't have that luxury. You're hiring digital retailing companies to work with to bring you leads. You've got your websites. You've got what the OEMs advertising that may or may not necessarily flow into what it is that you guys will deliver that makes sense for you. So the big shift has been this adoption of digital retailing that actually works, right? You guys have to control the narrative. If you can't control the narrative, meaning that the digital retailing providers that you work with don't quote your payments your way, you need to fire them. You need to work with digital retailing technologies that are going to accurately represent you. That way, when the consumer makes that clicks to bricks transition, be it that then they can now come into your store, or be it that the vehicle is going to get delivered on a flatbed with a notary to sign the paperwork, it doesn't make any difference. The transaction can't change. If the scenario is exactly the same, which you quote these guys upstream, you need to be able to replicate in the store. And if you're not being accurately represented, you're not going to be able to replicate that. And then trust is lost. The consumer, goes online and does, well, I gave them 1 star because 0 wasn't available, right? Those kinds of reviews, as opposed to having a consumer in and out in 45 minutes to an hour, taking delivery of a new vehicle.
So last year, when we had the AWA Awards, we recognized a product that you developed that's available for dealers called M-Drive. When I saw the product, I was like, I'm not really sure if everyone understands the power of this product. And here's the reason why. I've never worked in automotive retail, but for the last 16 years, I've spent tremendous time with dealers and leadership, and I have a good pulse on which products are working to do what in the dealership world. But one of the things that hit me was, how do we have a consistent presentation of the dealer's transactional price throughout the whole ecosystem? We know now that very few companies have a consistent ability to deliver the same price payment across multiple medias, through email marketing, through direct mail, through the Google ads or Facebook ads, and that those type of payments and transactions can't be changed very quickly. Some of it's manual. And so we came out with the M-Drive product. Before we show it to everyone here live, how do you describe the benefits M-Drive, and we're going to do a live demonstration on this, of a product that in seconds can give anyone inside the dealership who's having a conversation with a consumer the dealer's transactional price and also the best opportunity to get that financing or leasing done. What's the vision for this product? Because I don't really consider it, say, a digital retailing product because it has a different feel to it.
Yeah, thank you for that. It does have a different feel to it. Historically, we've dealt with customers who either knew what they wanted to drive or we had to help them figure out what it is that they wanted to drive. There's a whole new generation of buyers out there who have almost no brand loyalty. A lot of them aren't car guys, right? I'm the exact opposite. I get all excited about a car, and my wife will tell you I won't shut up until I go get one. But the whole younger generation, they shop by checking certain needs boxes, right? I've got a growing family. I need a sport utility vehicle with these safety ratings, this kind of mileage, and I want to spend a certain amount of money up front and so much a month for so many months. And that how much up front, how much a month for how many months is what influences most consumers' behavior when they go to buy a vehicle. So with M-Drive, we'll take all the information from all the lending institutions that you guys have in your portfolio, all the rebates and incentives that can apply to it, and the four most common be college grad, military, repeat customer, and loyalty, or conquest. But there's billions of dollars of other ones that you can throw in the mix. Take all the municipality stuff, all the taxes, fees, registrations, all the fees that you charge, everything. And we'll do a real deep dive on your inventory, and we can very easily look and say, okay, this customer's got this budget, this is where they are, this is their credit score, they're looking for new, used, lease, retail, whatever. Here's all the cars in your inventory that fit them. And we'll bring them back sorted by what we call payment value index, which is what's the best bang for the buck. We have our own product that's dealer facing, that's a mobile app. This is also serviced through our MScan API product, which is what powers a whole bunch of the different digital retailing companies that are out there. We just recently launched this, so you'll start seeing that maybe even from some of your website providers now. The first one who's got it implemented is a company called Frictionless Technology, Frickentech. But Roadster does a great job, and these guys are, I'm sure, in the room, with the same type of technology where you can go in and find out, okay, what can this customer drive? Then there's also another application for it, and that's what we call opportunity mining. Everybody knows what equity mining is. A lot of you guys are using technologies that are out there to try and figure out are there opportunities that we can take advantage of. But this opportunity mining is kind of like equity mining on steroids. So you can go broad, or you could also go very narrow. Very narrow could be a consumer who's coming into the dealership for service, and he's $2,500 upside down. He's paying $500 a month on his vehicle, and there may be an opportunity to get him out of his vehicle with nothing out of pocket and get him into something brand new, payment basically exactly the same, at the terms and conditions that you guys want to sell this vehicle for.
And Rusty, let me just stop there, because some people I'm hearing in their head, I read minds, it's like, this doesn't sound like something new. I want to be clear that that little statement you made, at the terms and conditions that the dealer wants to do business, this isn't just estimates or near, around, about, approximately. Once the dealer sets up their terms and conditions and their fees, the entire ecosystem is based on a transactional price that the F&I office would sign off on.
Yeah, that's the difference. It's equity mining on steroids, right? And we calculate scientifically perfect solutions for any conceivable automotive transaction. That is what we do. So when we present an option to a consumer, it's not, okay, we think this is close, we got to go do a bunch of drill down on it. This is to the penny exactly what's going to be on the lease, finance, cash, purchase option, balloon note contract that you generate in your finance office, assuming the scenario doesn't change. And all of the elements necessary in order to calculate that exact transaction are dictated by you as a dealer. your fees, how you interpret tax laws. If you guys are in the Northeast, if we got any dealers from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, you got all kinds of goofy laws up there. And you've got some dealers will take a super aggressive approach about how they interpret those tax laws. The opposite end of the spectrum, you got these super conservative approaches. They generate different payments, different transactions. Our job is to make sure we replicate exactly what's going to come out of your CDK Reynolds, DealerTrack, Arcona, AutoSoft box, because we don't want to quote a payment something in one place in the store and then all of a sudden lose trust as they transition through their buying journey.
So to the AV crew, let's switch to your phone. Let's go live. There's nothing embarrassing on your phone.
Okay, so
I hope.
Yeah, so about that.
Okay.
I don't do canned demos, and I don't know how to do one from my phone. So
we may need to do a screen share.
Oh, I may be off.
Yeah.
So this is my live phone. So if something inappropriate pops up from my 18-year-old son, I'm going to apologize in advance because he has my sense of humor, and that's not necessarily a great thing. So this is the ticker. I guess I had it up. So it's what is it, 8:15, 8:30 this morning. We've calculated 100 and something million payments. And I'm going to put these on because I'm old and I can't see. All right. Okay, so let's see, M Drive. M Drive. So there's a couple of ways M Drive works. Is that showing up right?
Yeah,
yeah,
perfect.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. Now this is our mobile app. It's powered by the exact same API that a whole bunch of different technology companies utilize. This is just our interpretation of it. And M Drive can work in multiple concentric circles. The smallest concentric circle being the individual dealership. The next concentric circle could be a dealer group, followed by maybe a lender or a manufacturer, then followed by an aggregator like a Dealer Inspire, Cars.com. We power all their calculations as well. So we can take some additional elements that aren't surfaced in our UI, because this would be something a salesperson at your store has. And that can be a latitude, longitude, geolocation, and a radius. So if a customer was shopping and you guys had a group of dealerships, they could go to your website and say, look, I'm willing to drive 10 miles. What do you have in your inventory in any of your stores that fits my budget? We can do that. So I'm going to show you that one, and then I'll show you also what are my payments. So what can I drive? And I'm going to look at just a single dealership. This is a sample dealership inventory. Think of it as Market Scan Motors. We've got about 1,600 vehicles in inventory. Everything all over the map, new, used, all kinds of stuff. Everything from Hyundais to Bentleys. So when I run through this, it'll help me narrow the search down for what a customer's looking for. And I have my defaults here of 720, credit score $1,500 cash, 12,000 miles a year, new and used, lease and finance. I guess if you guys are just going through the boxes with me. If I've got a customer who says, look, I want a payment between $475 and $525. If I have a guy maybe in my service drive and he's upside down. So what I've got is I've got a $2,500 negative equity. I'm going to take the cash out. Right? I got $2,500 negative equity, zero cash. I got a guy who's paying $500 a month. I want to see if I can get him out of the vehicles he's driving and get him into something new. Right? So out of the 1,600 vehicles that I have in my inventory, there's 152 that meet his requirements. There's a Hyundai Kona EV, a Kia Niro, Toyota Tacoma, right? Now these are sorted by payment value index, PVI, which is the biggest bang for the buck. So if I look at this Hyundai Kona, it's a $43,500 vehicle. I can also put him in, if I really don't like him, I can put him in a $17,000 Mitsubishi Eclipse. It's essentially the exact same financial package for him. One's a finance versus a lease, but we get the best bang for the buck, right? So that's one way to look at it. Now, the other thing that we can do and take into consideration that these transactions have everything baked in, all your taxes, fees, whatever rebates, incentives, all that kind of stuff. We can drill down further if we know what the customer's trading in or driving. We can automatically apply conquest or loyalty rebates on the fly, and then the narrative might change. We might end up with different vehicles. So this meets the needs of two of the three types of shoppers, the guy who's shopping by a budget or the opportunity mining. It's kind of the same philosophy. The traditional shopper, and this is kind of a fun one, we just started doing this, so this has a little bit of construction dust, we'll see. The traditional shopper knows what he wants, right? Now, one of the things that has been a challenge for the automotive industry forever is the time consumers spend unattended during their new car buying experience, right? Anybody know what the number of minutes is on average that a customer spends unattended when they buy a car from you guys? Any guy got a guess? 72 is national average. 72. 5 years ago it was 74. We're killing it, guys. Right? So what happens when, and it's not your fault, right? You guys don't get to run your sales department like a dental office, right? Every half hour we have an up, right? You're sitting there, it's slow, and then all of a sudden church lets out on Sunday or some event lets out or the game's over, and then you're flooded, right? And your sales managers are scrambling. And your sales guys are like, can I get you a cup of coffee? I'll be back in a few minutes. And they're in line and they're 10, 12 minutes at a time. Consumers sitting there unattended, what are they doing? They're calling your competitor, or they're calling a third baseman. And that competitor is saying, get up and walk out. They're lying to you. We'll make you a better deal, right? Or somebody's saying, I think you're spending too much, or I think you can get a better deal somewhere else. This puts you in a position where you never have to leave the customer unattended during their entire experience, right? So we can take the budget. We can also, if we're walking around on the lot, oh, thanks. I'll tell you a story about the car in a minute. It's not that I like to play with models, but we sponsored a NASCAR race on July 4th of last year, and Lionel actually picked up the car. So we bought a bunch of them. It was pretty cool. So, but if you have a QR code of your stock number or VIN on the cars, or all the cars have a barcode in the door, right, or on the dash, you can scan. Your salespeople can walk around the dealership, and they can scan the QR code or a barcode, right, and it knows that it's this multicolor. You can see the color dot, multicolor Camaro, right? I can put some basic information in about my customer, right? I need to know a zip code for my taxes and stuff. I'm gonna leave the trade out, right? And then I'm gonna do my first pencil, right? So the process of the first pencil, where I'll be back in a minute, I'm gonna go talk to my sales manager, I'm gonna come back with a Foursquare, is completely electronic. And the payments that are shown up here are dictated exactly by the terms and conditions that are preset. What your selling price rules are on these pieces of inventory based on any level of granularity, year, make, model, trim, lot age, however you want to look at it. All the fees that you charge, how you interpret those tax laws up in the Northeast, all that kind of stuff. And then we have, obviously, you guys have seen all this stuff before, where you've got a slider, right? When a customer wants to pay $482 a month, he needs $3,868 cash. Now, what makes this slider unique, because it looks basic like all the rest of them, is that when it did that calculation, it calculated every lender's program available for this dealership and every special in every one of those lenders' programs to figure out what is the cheapest monthly payment we can offer this customer that meets our profit needs. We've dictated the terms and conditions that we're willing to transact, and we give the consumer the ability to desk their own deal. They can change the number of miles a year they drive, they can change the term, they can change cash, they can go from lease to finance, but at the end of the day, they're not changing the profitability of the deal. If you have paid reserve baked in, that's in there as well. Every element that you want to control on your pencil is controlled ahead of time electronically and accurately represented to the consumer through your salespeople without them ever leaving your customer unattended.
So Rusty, when we look at this tool, there are some people who have different similar solutions or something not as efficient or effective. Let's get a couple feedback points. Any questions from the dealers? Is this feasible to implement in your dealership, challenge in your dealership? We have a lot of smart people here in the room. Give us some feedback. Hold on. Yeah, remember the live stream people would want to hear.
How come you don't have these agreements with the CRM companies?
We power a bunch of them. So this part of our technology is very, very new. So we are literally just rolling it out. There's 7 or 8 CRM solutions right now who are baking this technology into their solution. So we do.
Where do you get OEM incentives from? Some manufacturers are simple, but Ford, for example, is a nightmare.
That's my favorite question to answer. So we've been in this space for 33 years. Our core competency is the aggregation, the electronic aggregation of monstrous amounts of data. So our process is completely different than AIS, DealerTrack, Chrome, JTO, those guys who all have 100 people somewhere. There's 2 teams in India, 1 in the Philippines, and 1 in the States. So we have relationships with most of the lending institutions and manufacturers. Those who we don't have relationships with, we have other source relationships, but we don't buy data from any of them. We electronically aggregate all of it. Ford is our flagship fun one. If you look at Chrome, who is maybe our nearest competitor in the Ford space, the guy who heads up all of that division for Chrome is a guy named John Kissling, and John was my first data entry employee in 1994. I actually helped him get his job at Chrome. His dad got sick, and he was from Portland. He moved up there. Their process takes 5,000 man-hours to ingest the Ford incentive and rebate matrix. That's 100 people, 50 hours, manually putting wrong numbers in with their fingers, right? Our process on a 16-core Azure setup, which is a boat ton of horsepower, right? Takes 26 minutes, which is an eternity in that environment. But what they do in 5,000 man-hours, we do 3 times a day. So we have all of the data from all the lenders, all the manufacturers, all the municipalities, and a lot of the dealers. And obviously, as more dealers get on board, we track your terms and conditions so you're accurately represented as well. But we have all of it.
Great. Any other questions before we move on? We have a lot to cover today, but before we move off of this tool in the hand, was there a question over here? We have Sarah. Good morning, Alan.
What's the differences between OfferLogix and eLend Solutions and people like that in comparison to what you have?
Another great question. There's a few. The biggest is the level of accuracy. The level of accuracy in representing the terms and conditions under which the individual dealerships are willing to transact, and also the calculation methodology from a taxation and registration fee standpoint. We've spent dozens and dozens of years building the technology to accurately calculate the transactions for the municipalities for the 38 goofy markets, right? There's 51 markets in the US if you count DC. 13 of them are easy, 38 of them are messed up. So all the different switches and levers that you guys set in order to interpret the tax laws you want, we have. We also have the exact registration fee calcs for every inch of the country, and we know the exact tax rate percentages. We can take an address, we can decode it down to a latitude, longitude, geolocation, and if you're in Detroit and you're in one of those gigantic buildings where the tax rate's different from one suite to the other, we can provide the exact tax rate. Once we calculate, or once we settle on those, then we accurately apply all those to generate a payment that is a scientifically perfect payment. The difference between a penny perfect payment and a scientifically perfect solution is the scientifically perfect solution is the very best fundable, defendable penny perfect payment out there. We're the only company in the industry that has the ability to calculate perfect, fundable, defendable programs. And that's why we calculate 300 million of them a day.
So to the AV booth, let's switch back to the PowerPoint because we have a lot to cover here today. So let's talk about the next opportunity. We saw a dealer-facing challenge of how do we, in any place on the lot, at any time with a customer, whether in the BDC or whatever, have transactional, scientifically perfect payments. But we know, and I have gone through a crash course on this, is that it's difficult for dealers to fund a competitive deal because maybe the OEM programs are not as aggressive as they should be, so dealers are losing business. So how are you taking this huge data lake and applying it to solve problems for OEMs?
So it's almost the exact same approach, almost the exact same approach that we took with lending institutions. So we do a ton of work with Ally Financial, US Bank, several of the OEMs, but from a leasing standpoint, which is much more complex, obviously, than finance, Ally and US Bank are the two most prolific non-captives that are out there. And through that process, we learned how to help them basically structure their programs in a way where they're buying the business for the right price, but it also gave us tremendous insight into what the landscape really looks like. When we look nationally from a lease perspective, the captive lending institution has the cheapest monthly payment, everything else being equal, on almost exactly 50% of the transactions that are out there. And then there's non-captives that have the other 50%. And when you're in the middle, if the captive lender is $1, $2, $3 a month more expensive than non-captive, nobody cares. But when it's 20, 30, 40% different, it's $100 a month on a $400 a month car, then it makes a big difference. So being able to take that type of information into consideration and apply that to how a manufacturer looks at the world is just another one of those opportunities that we're going after.
So Rusty, to put some context to the problem that you've solved, and we're going to see here for many of you for the first time, how much do manufacturers spend on rebates, incentives a year?
Not much, only about $40 billion.
40 billion, okay.
Yeah.
And do you believe that the OEMs would prefer to see more of the finance and lease transactions go direct through their captives?
It depends on the OEM.
Okay.
A lot of them, the answer is yes. For sure, they would prefer to sell more cars for the same spend or spend less to sell the same number of cars, right? And when you look at, GM's a great example. GM spends $1 billion a month on rebates, right? And there's a better way.
So let's talk about that better way. Specifically, you've taken this huge data set to solve a problem. And that problem is, how do I optimize the money that I want to use for rebates, incentives to hit a transactional goal? So you made this quote to me, and I said, let me put it in the slides. What do you mean by this particular statement?
So this is another one of those sayings we have floating around, which is there's a reason why the windshield is much larger than the rearview mirror. The way manufacturers historically analyze their rebate spend, and they throw a ton of money at this and a lot of effort and science, is they buy data from J.D. Power's PIN network, Urban Science, Experian, IHS Market, and they look to see what happened. Right? So they'll go by last 7 days, the last 30 days, and they'll look to see where they were. But it's kind of like returning to the scene of the crash to try to figure out what went wrong, right? And we're much better off avoiding the crash in the first place. And the only way we can avoid the crash is to look forward. Look at the world the way the world looks at us as opposed to the way we have historically looked at the world. And MScope gives us the ability to do that.
So these are some high-level points. We're going to show some specific examples that are really eye-opening, but what are you doing? So the MScope product, obviously there's some bullet points here, but for the manufacturers here in the room, for the manufacturers that are watching on the live stream, how are you solving a huge problem, a huge time suck for them, and help them to be more nimble?
So I'm not going to read through all this stuff. Nice slide, Karsten. I didn't put this one up here. Karsten's our chief marketing officer. He did a lot of help with this. If we look, and if we distill it down to a single vehicle, right, which we kind of can't, because from a manufacturer, they've got their list of, GM's got their makes and they've got their models and they've got all the different trims that are associated with it. Every single one of those trims has a list of trims for which they compete, right? GM, you've got your Ford, your Chrysler products, and then if you're in the trucks, you've got Toyotas, whatever, all these different vehicles. And what we know is, unless there's a lot of brand loyalty, consumers' behavior is going to be influenced by a financial package that makes sense for them, assuming all of their needs boxes get checked. So if I'm a manufacturer and I'm trying to figure out how do I want to influence a consumer's behavior, I need to know what they're seeing from the other vehicles they're shopping on, right? So if I'm a Ford and I've got an F-150 and I'm trying to compete against a Ram 1500 and a Chevy 1500, if the Chevy 1500 truck has all kinds of crazy rebates and stuff and the payment's much cheaper, it cost me a lot more to get that consumer to no longer look at the Chevy to buy my Ford. But if the Ram 1500 truck doesn't have as aggressive a program, it costs me much less. So rather than looking at what happened before and saying, okay, we're gonna put $3,000 rebate on Conquest, we might put $500 rebate on Conquest on a Chrysler and $5,500 rebate on Conquest on a Chevy. Right? We spend the same amount of money, but we get two customers as opposed to missing one and paying too much for the other.
So let's talk about some real life examples. When an OEM is trying to figure out the competitive, offers that they're gonna push out to the dealer network, and it's very complex, right? Every car competing against dozens of different competing trims. M-Scope gives them the ability in a second to play with some dials and see if they would win business, especially if they're targeting the right lender or the right manufacturer. Let's talk about these circles and then we'll show some of the data from it. But this tool is available today to allow the people who make those decisions to make smarter competitive decisions.
Yeah, so this is the windshield with a pro driver in it, if there's any motorsports fans out there. I got zippers and scars all over me from not being very good in a race car. But I understand the process, right? And if we look at, like when we said, if we distill it down to one particular vehicle, we have to look at the entire ecosystem from a competitive standpoint. But if we take the mindset that the payment is what's going to influence the consumer, assuming the widget makes sense for them, right? The brand loyalty's not there, or they like this vehicle just as much as the other. If the transaction's exactly the same amount of cash up front, same number of miles a year, if it's a lease, all the rest of the stuff is the same, then if one payment's $100 a month cheaper than the other, I'm probably going to take that one, because it's just, unless I like that car unless I like that car $100 a month more, I might take this one. So when we look at every single vehicle for every single term, and this is every trim that each one of these trims competes against, we'll calculate what the best monthly payment is for the competitive vehicles through the captive lender and any other lending institutions they want to take into consideration. And we'll show you an example why they have to look at the others in a second. If I'm trying to compete against the Ford or the Chevy truck and I'm Ford, and their payment's $45 a month cheaper than mine, if I want to get that customer and I say, okay, I know I'm going to get that customer if I'm $5 a month cheaper, everything else being the same, then I've got $50 a month that I have to find in order to get this customer to convert, in order to buy his business. Now, in order to get there, I have to pull some switches and levers, and the switches and levers that I can pull if I control this evented program are the rate, the residual, rebate, dealer-facing incentives, and even the acquisition fee or bank fee, assignment fee, whatever you want to call it on a lease. I've got just 3 of them here. And I want to take a different blend. So if my payment's got to go down, I'm going to take 15% of the difference that it takes to get my payment there by increasing my residual value. I'm going to decrease my rate to pick up 35% of it, and then I'm going to pick up the other half with a rebate. Now, conversely, if I'm paying too much for the business already and my payment's got to go up, I might want a different blend. I want them to take half of it out of my residual risk and 10% by increasing my rate and the 40% by taking it out of the rebate. And what this target acquisition will do is it will, through the analysis, will tell the manufacturer or the user for every trim, for every term, for every vehicle for which they compete, what rate, residual, rebate in this account, in this particular scenario, they need to use to generate the exact same payment to position them where they want to be positioned in the marketplace to buy the business for the exact right price.
So let's use an example, and I was in their office and literally saw the data tables. So pick any car that you sell and every competitive trim. So every trim that you sell and every realistic competitive trim with every current finance program that the OEMs are offering, and giving the manufacturer a dial to say, I need to be more competitive with Chevy this month, and how do I get there? Or in this case, as Rusty will tell the story, this one manufacturer thought the other OEM was their competitor, and it really wasn't. So Rusty, tell the story and how M-Scope can revolutionize the way manufacturers can give the dealers in this room better programs to be competitive.
This was a fun example. So this is the quintessential, let's go to the scene of the crash, figure out where we should be positioned, and hope the market doesn't change much. So the Silverado and the Tundra are basically the same price vehicle. I mean, there's something like $500 difference in the MSRP. So we weight the payment differently. The payment that GM or GM Financial was targeting was a $700 a month payment, or $705.23 a month. And they wanted to be a little bit cheaper than that. So they did. They came in at $697, right? So they're there. They're $7 a month cheaper than their competitor, right? But they're not getting any of that business because all of this business is going to Ally Financial. Ally Financial is $100 a month cheaper than Toyota Financial Services on this vehicle in this market. In order to get the business, they don't need to target $705.23 as their target. They need to target $603.79. So for this 36-month lease, now this is literally a T9C snippet of a gigantic report. But for this particular example, in order for them to position themselves where they're going to get that business, where they're $7 a month cheaper than their actual competitor, they need to use a 57% residual value, a zero rate, right? So they got to drop the rate all the way to zero, a 57% residual value and a $1,700 rebate. And then the payment that they generate, everything taken into consideration, all the taxes, fees, all that kind of stuff, will position them $5 a month cheaper than their competitor. So they'll get that business supposed to be $100 a month higher. And when you look at these, 0% rate, and we know there's some zero programs out there, 57% residual value, certain rebate. Part of the dashboard allows them to put guardrails up. So, we know nobody's going to say, okay, well, I'll put a $100,000 rebate on something to get it, So they'll put limits. This is the most rebate I'll do. This is the most number of points I'm going to add to a residual value. This is the minimum rate, that kind of stuff. And then when the analytics run, it'll run hundreds of thousands of vehicles because you got to combine all of them and generate these reports, and it takes about 6 seconds. So,
to me, this is a perfect example of where our industry is going. Instant data-driven decisions that either help us transact better or to craft programs that are going to support the dealer network. You as dealers need to really think about the companies that are here and the data lakes that they have, and reimagining what retail looks like. And especially those of you who are on OEM advisory boards and you are constantly fighting that their financing, their captive programs aren't competitive, it could be very well that their playbook on how they determine, just like in this example, they're looking at the wrong competitor. They're not seeing everything the way the data lake would see it. Rusty, we just have 2 or 3 minutes left. Let's talk about this. What do you see the biggest driver of change in the future? You are obviously working with dealers, OEMs, and lenders. You see these transactions evolving at hyper speed. What's the next biggest change that we're going to see?
I can't predict what the next biggest change is. I hope it's just a continued evolution of actual proper retailing, right, where the consumer's message is received and is consistent through its entire journey. I think the biggest drivers are based on the numbers, right? There's a whole lot more consumers than there are dealers. There's a whole lot more dealers than there are lenders, and there's a whole lot more lenders than there are manufacturers. So the consumers have been driving a huge part of this change. You know, they all want this Amazon-type buying experience. But there's 17,000 of you guys, right? And you have a voice, and you have a not too terribly indirect mouthpiece as well, right? You guys need to drive the change also. The companies that you work with have to accurately represent you, and they have to respect how you want to do business, right? It doesn't matter whether it's us. There's a bunch of great, heavily funded technology companies in the space, and there's more entering the space than we've ever seen before. I mean, they're coming out of the woodwork. And then the guys who have done a great job are getting bought by big companies, and they're making bigger, better things. But your voice needs to be heard, and you need to make sure that you're accurately represented, because if you're not, it just sets up the consumer for failure. They lose trust, and the process falls apart.
And I will just say, for all the ad tech companies here, and we have a number of large ones, I think that it's absolutely time for all of the larger and mid-sized ad tech agencies to leverage the power of the API that MarketScan has, so that Facebook ads, Google ads, email, all are powered by scientifically perfect payments that you can stand behind and transact. And of course, we don't see that today. So those of you who are in ad tech or developing, make sure you spend some time with Rusty to understand how your marketing ecosystem and infrastructure can be powered by this data. Rusty, thank you for your time. Would you give Rusty a big round of applause? Thank you. All right. I'm going to let the AV team close out the live stream, and we're going to set up our chairs for our next panel. We have a